Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Engineering Project Management Podcast. Now, this is a podcast that's dedicated to helping project managers to sharpen their project management skills. I'm your host, Matt Douglas, and in this episode of the Engineering Project Management Podcast, I'm going to be talking with Sean Brune. Now, Sean is a licensed professional engineer and also the department manager of project management at Stanley Consultants. Now, we're going to be talking a little bit about how to ensure project efficiency and budget control in our projects. And he's also going to be providing us with some key advice for engineers looking to transition into project management. All right, everyone, it is now time for our PM conversation of the week with Sean Brune. So Sean, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Matt?
Doing great. So let's get started really quick here, and let's just go with an introduction first. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself and the listeners about yourself, and a little bit about your journey and how you transformed your career from a design engineer into a project manager?
Sure. Yeah. So like most people who ended up in a project management role in the engineering industry, I seemingly fell into it. So I grew up, as they say, as an electrical engineer. I went to the Colorado School of Mines, got degrees in electrical engineering and computer science, and went on to start my career in design engineering. I started in the architectural realm, working on power and lighting for commercial facilities, and then moved into the high voltage realm, working on substation protection controls design, and made a couple forays into other industries, working on facilities for the FAA and other things like that. So while I was working for Lockheed Martin at the FAA, that was my first opportunity to jump into project management. I was working as a lead engineer on several radar sites in Alaska when the project manager who was managing all my projects up there, actually, he had some health issues and I was needing to step away for a while. And I filled in that capacity for several smaller projects while he was out. And that's when I realized I actually enjoyed doing this. I enjoy touching all the other aspects of a project, not just the design I'm working on in that moment, right? So that's when I sparked my interest, and I realized, hey, there's a whole organization out there in PMI, there's a certification to get your PMP, all that stuff that ties into project management. And that all these large engineering design projects that we work on, there's a big need for project managers. So from there, I jumped right in, feet first. I went back to the utility industry and started working on major projects as a PM for big transmission lines and substation projects, and been doing it ever since, really. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. So when did you get started with Stanley, actually? And did you start off with Stanley as a design engineer, or did you start off as a project manager when you got there?
Yeah, so I'm brand new at Stanley. I started in Stanley about 4 months ago. So
Okay.
I started in this capacity. I'm a department manager for project management. So very similar to my last role. I came from another consultant engineering services company, and I was managing a group of project managers, project control specialists there. So it's a very similar role to what I was doing before, maybe a little more expanded with larger purview. But I'm still learning Stanley. It's all, I'm learning the process here, but I'll tell you, it's robust. I'm learning a lot. It's like drinking from the fire hose, but it's all good. Mm-hmm. It's good stuff.
Nice. I mean, and we've had a little bit of experience at EMI working with Stanley over time, and it's a great company. Like, they just have such a great infrastructure. I love the leadership there, and I think that they have a lot of great things going for them, a lot of interesting projects that they're working on. So let's go on and talk about your experience a little bit more, dive into that. So in your experience, how do consulting engineering firms help with utility clients to keep their projects on budget?
No, that's a good question. The utility industry in and of itself is pretty unique, right? It's essentially a regulated monopoly across the country. You have various pockets where, like in Texas, where they try to do a free market with the distribution side, where people can pick, who they have as their utility. But for the most part, it's regulated monopoly everywhere. That means you have to deal with independent service operators or public utility commissions or various entities that are doing the regulation, right? So why that's important is, well, when a utility, maybe a publicly traded utility, has their budget for the year, Well, they're pretty set with that. Their capital expenditure budget gets approved by whatever ISO or PUC that they're under. And it's somewhat like government work. This is where my government background kind of comes into play a little bit. You get in trouble if you get too far over, you get in trouble if you get too far under. You got to be right in that sweet spot. You typically plus or minus 5% for the whole portfolio. Well, so that's where project management really comes into play, and that's the budget management.
Gotcha.
Right? And Stanley, we offer two types of project management, what we call our owner's engineer project managers, and then our engineering design project managers. And both have a role in that. The owner's engineer PMs, it's kind of like what it sounds like. Our project managers who are in that capacity go to our clients to represent the owner of the client as a project manager in that capacity. And so they take over that project and are responsible for the whole budget of that project. And that project then becomes a part of the overall capital expenditures budget for that utility. So it's a key piece. And then turn around, the engineering design is one piece of that project. Well, then we might be the PM on that piece as well. And that rolls up into the overall project, right? So both parts are essential to make sure that rolls up into that portfolio and that they're still relatively close to whatever number they said they were going to do. So the capital expenditure is a big deal. And that's where we really can shine. You come in, okay, this is what the project was approved as. And you got to keep everybody in line with that. And you got to keep on top of it. Communication is key, right? You got to make sure that all the different parties from various companies, different service lines, everything are working together and are aware of what you're trying to get to. And so that, it sounds easy in theory, right? I'll just make sure everyone knows that, but you got to keep everybody thinking about it and you got to keep going. And so that's where, we really can provide a good service is, hey, we work with the client, with the utility. Okay, this is your budget. Okay, we're taking these projects for you. That's this part of it, and work with it. And, as you know, projects go down, things happen, unexpected stuff comes up. And that's where you do the risk management up front, right? You come up with your reserve and you do all that. But even then, there's the unknown unknowns and things like that. Well, that's where we can work with the client on the overall portfolio, because just because this project may be going over, well, maybe there's an opportunity. Oh, well, this one wasn't really, priority on the year. We had it in the budget, but we can push that out and that money can, then be used to cover whatever this problem was, or vice versa. Hey, we're coming in, under budget. We're doing, it's just happening more efficiently. These things we thought were going to happen really didn't. It made it easier. And that frees up money for other projects. And so we constantly have that back and forth with their portfolio managers to make sure that we're working within that overall budget, because it's at the end of the day, it's that they don't care about individual projects as much as that last number, right? Hey, did we meet our overall budget for the year? And that's not, I shouldn't say they don't care about obviously the projects are very important. They're what make it up, but at the end of the day, that's the number that counts, right? So that's where we can provide a lot of service. And then by being that owner's engineer PM, well, then we know our design project manager, right? You have that kind of, I call it the back door to get in and get the info from it, right? You guys, same company, we can work with each other a lot easier. If they're having problems on the design side, you can get that much sooner to then, report that information up or work with the rest of the team to figure out what to do and just, be proactive rather than reactive. So that's where we really can provide a lot of value for keeping utilities on budget is just thinking of it holistically from the entire budget point of view.
I heard you say something about a monopoly, and I'm not sure if you've actually lived in Texas or if you're from Texas. I'm actually in Texas right now in the Houston area, from Maryland, and I've seen that just a transition, or not exactly a transition, but the transition and experience for me where I'm from Maryland on the East Coast. And we pretty much had the same exact monopoly with Baltimore Gas and Electric, and just having one utility provider for the whole entire area. And then when I came out here into Texas, it was something completely different where, every year I'm looking to see if I can fight to get a different rate on my electricity bill. So it's interesting to see, that there's actually something that's really behind it, that there's a reason why a lot of these companies out here are unregulated, and why they have the price speculation as they have.
They are regulated on that. Still. They are regulated still, but you're right. There's more of a push for a free market, which I think is a good thing, but I shouldn't say it is regulated. There was a winter storm a few years ago, right? That really caused havoc in Texas. And that was because, in part, because of this free market. When certain providers of energy went down and all of a sudden power wasn't as easy to get in the island that was ERCOT at the time, that caused the prices to skyrocket, right? And so that's the flip side is when there's problems and it's not regulated, at least for an emergency, that people were seeing utility bills, and I forget the exact numbers, but they were in the thousands and stuff that just came up out of this, right? And I think people got worked with, and hopefully most of those got resolved. But that's the flip side, right? Is, hey, it's all well and good until there's a problem, right? And so I know there's been a lot, and I'm not as familiar with that market, but I know there's been a lot of changes that have been happening over the last few years to try and avoid a situation like that again. But it's not typical to get an ice storm that far south, and one that was like that, I guess, just really shut everything down. It caused major problems with that free market.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, it is.
I don't know if that ice storm is, go ahead.
I was going to say, but you're right. Most of the rest of the country, it's a regulated monopoly. And that's just the way it needs to be. You can't have, you can, but nobody wants 6 different transmission lines going down the road for the various different companies, just so you can have a choice. People get upset about seeing one a lot of the time, right? So right. It's out of necessity that it's done this way, but that just means that they're really beholden to their numbers, their budgets.
Well, I can tell you right now that I have a huge beef with the companies out here, because over the summer, I don't know if ERCOT
you're not the first
ice
one I've
storm.
Say that, yeah.
Oh man, I had recently just moved with my family to a bigger living situation. And man, when I tell you that over the summer, number one, I went back home to Maryland and in like June. And then when I was there for maybe about 3 or 4 weeks or so. And it just did not rain in Houston like the whole entire time. I mistakenly left my electricity on in the house, or not exactly my electricity, but my AC unit. And it was just running the whole entire time. And I came back to like $1,000 electricity bill. I was not happy at all because, who wants to come back to $1,000 electricity bill month after month after month? That's just kind of crazy, but I don't know. I just wanted to point that out in case any of these companies are out here watching, I'm going to get you,
Well, but that's where you're in free market. You can go see if you can get a better rate with one of the competitors there, the other distributors.
Yeah. Luckily. So now I need to add that to my list of projects to go and work on. All right. Well, moving on here, let's talk about some obstacles and some pitfalls that you experience in your industry in particular. So what are some common pitfalls that you experience in the utility industry?
Sure. So there's a couple that are pretty common, pretty major. First one is really, the land acquisition and permitting together. Especially when you have a large T line that's many, many miles long. Well, then you're dealing with a multitude of landowners, and it's going to be it's a combination, right? You'll have federal landowner, you have Forest Service here in Colorado, BLM, and private landowners, right? Those are the big ones that you'll find, and you have to coordinate, negotiate, and work with all of them, and that can take a lot of time, and that's really hard to plan for in the front end when you're coming up with your schedule and your budget. Hey, if we need to acquire new easements, do we need to, what's that going to take and what's that going to cost? And that's the part where you're going to have to be a little more dynamic and trust your land agents when they say, that person is not going to play ball. That's going to take a while, right? Or, no, they're fine. They've done this before. They have, another line over here, and they know how it works, and then they're totally on board with doing it. Those are the two ends of the spectrum, really, and you see it all. That can really throw a wrench in because you're in the front end, you're trying to plan for it. Like, okay, land acquisition, you give it, however many weeks, right? And, that may be accurate. And all you can do is, hey, make the best estimate with the information you got. That's such a big part of project management, right? You create the plan with the best information you have at that time. And then when you get new information, you have to adjust it. Well, that's a big part of the land and permitting. The same with the permit requirements. You got to go in and see, okay, is it federal? Is it state? Is it local? Is it some combination thereof? Is it environmental? Is it, all sorts of stuff. And you usually have to work with these agencies at that point to come up with a plan that works in order to get the permitting. So, both of those can really throw a wrench in a project. And really my advice for that is try and be proactive. That's something when you're in the front end, you're in the development stage of your project. Don't be afraid to get those folks who are working on that aspect of your project going on that stuff so that they can try and get ahead of it before a problem happens. And if a problem happens, that's part of projects too. That's okay. We can adjust. You have to then do your change management process, whatever that may be. Adjust your schedule, adjust your budget as needed, right? So that's a big one. The second one is, I guess I'll call it dealing with environmental concerns. And it really ties into the permitting a little bit too. At least here in Colorado, a big part of time in the mountains is you either have ski season or you have hunting season, or you have tons of wildlife that have, certain seasons where they rut or what have you. You have to plan around those things. And what that can do is if you're, trying to work on a transmission line, for example, you may only be relegated to, hey, you can have construction going, what I call the shoulder months, right? March, April, May, if the snow is okay, not too deep. And like September, October, maybe into November again, if it doesn't come too early, and maybe only for 6 weeks at a time sometimes, because you'll have, it's mating season for this species or it's nesting season for this bird. And you have to work around those things. And those really can eat into your available time to get a project complete. So that's another thing that you just got to be proactive. And luckily, when you've done projects in the area, you and the other members of the team can be somewhat familiar then with, some of these in plan form up front, which really helps. But hey, every once in a while you get this new requirement that pops up for something you never knew about, and you have to add it in. So those are two real big pitfalls. And last thing you want is to miss something like that, have a regulator come in after the fact, see that you didn't do anything for it, and then have the project get fined or something like that, where it's a big deal. So it is something you need to do and plan for. And that's where you need to rely on the expertise of your team to tell you about those things as early as possible. So
good old government agencies, right? The timing that is required for the permitting process and can be quite daunting. So
yes,
on average, how long would you actually say that permitting process could really take for some of your projects that you've experienced?
Well, it's been all over the board, to be honest. I'd say I think some of the hardest ones, or can be the hardest ones, are like stormwater permitting. Mm-hmm. And that just depends on who the jurisdiction having authority is, right? The state usually is pretty decent. A lot of the counties are. If you end up with a local municipality or even some of the counties that are in charge of it, for whatever reason, a lot of times that makes it take a lot longer, like up to a year sometimes, to get that fully worked through with them and get the permit. So, but on the flip side, we've had them come in within a couple of weeks from a state or something. So, it's really all over the board. It just depends on what your project circumstances are and who you're dealing with and what their requirements are. And it unfortunately does vary. So it makes it difficult.
Yeah. I guess there's a bright side to that where based on the project, you can probably estimate how long it might actually take. So you can build that into your timing for your project. So
yeah,
I can see that as a positive.
Yeah. And then, you might have some contingency in there in case something drags on longer than you anticipated. But yeah, you can usually estimate it fairly well.
Gotcha. All right. So let's talk about Stanley's approach to project management. Can you tell me about like the unique approach that Stanley takes and, how that adds value to your clients?
Yeah. So I kind of mentioned that up front a little bit, that I was, I'm new to Stanley and came in and I'm learning this whole process. They've really taken the time here. And I should say we now to develop their own project lifecycle, right? And it's called the project delivery model here. And it's based on the PMBOK, from PMI. So everybody, out there with your PMPs, you've taken the exam and you've dealt with, the way those are set up with your stage gates, everything else. So that's what Stanley's done is, hey, how do we take that and make it work for our design engineering projects here? And I say it specifically for our design engineering projects because if you're working as owner's engineer, project manager, you're going to have to follow their process, right? And that's part of what we bring to the table too, is the ability to learn their life cycle and adapt to it and get projects to that. And I think that falls back to the fact that we have our own very well-defined life cycle with steps along the way that we use. So we're all familiar with how that should go and how that works. You just need to learn the specifics of the clients when you're going into theirs. So the one at Stanley here, like I said, it's called the project delivery model. We call it PDM. And there's really just four stages. So there's only 4 stage gates here that you have to work through. The four stages are pursuit, planning, execution, and closeout. As you can imagine, execution is usually the biggest piece of the pie.
Absolutely.
When you work for a engineering services firm like this, you start with the pursuit. We have clients we've worked with in the past. We have new clients out there we're talking with. They a lot of times throw out an RFP, request for proposal, that they want us to work on. That's when we open a project up here. Right? It becomes a pursuit at that point. And so it's from the very, very beginning, cradle to grave, really, all the way through close out. When the project is done, it's in service, and all the finances get figured out, and you close it out in the system. So yeah, it's really robust. It works very well. It helps us keep things on budget and on time because it's all the information's right there, right? You know which stage you're in, you know what activities are supposed to be happening, and you know who's working on it, right? So it's a lot more developed than a lot of others I've seen in the past. And like I said, I'm still learning all the aspects of it. So, but so far like I said, I'm here not quite 4 months. It's been really key to see projects going through that and how well it really can help. And flip side, it helps with the monitor and control when things are going wrong. Like, hey, it's getting over budget. Well, there's MIRA reports that are associated with that you can pull very quickly and easily that show you where things are and what's going on, and then you can have a quick review with the team and our project delivery folks to see what needs to be done, whether that's go for a change order because additional scope came up, or hey, we need to tone this back because we're spending too fast and it's not actually bringing any value to this. So what can we do there? Or hey, do we have the right resources on this project? Let's switch up who's working on it based on who really should be, right? So it allows you to make those decisions just through having that information at your fingertips.
No, that's nice. And I mean, that's something that we gotta show some expertise in here at EMI, like just wanting to help out engineering companies with developing their project management process, for lack of better terms. And
you'd be surprised how many places don't have it well defined.
Exactly what I was going to get into. And I just really applaud Stanley and Stanley's leadership for actually setting that PDM in process, because we've run across so many different companies that don't have something like that just because they haven't gotten there. And I think that there's really like a big reason for that. For one, Stanley's a fairly big company. I don't know exactly what we will consider it in terms of size, maybe a medium to large size company, but usually when they're larger, like they have the time and the resources to be able to spend on developing a PDM for themselves. Right. But we've all seen that the smaller companies sometimes are in the weeds of trying to get jobs, get projects going. And with that, so many people are just spinning their wheels on trying to make sure that projects are done on time and on budget, that they don't have time to actually set a standard for how those projects are supposed to be run from here and then on. Like there's no SOP, there's no procedure that's actually in place for these projects to get done on time and on budget. So, that's what we're here to help with, of course, but I really do appreciate seeing that a company like Stanley is doing this, which really speaks to the success of Stanley and why you guys are in the position that you guys are in, working on these huge projects now. So that's a great thing. So I applaud you guys. Hats off to y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk about innovation. I mean, we kind of already just went into that a little bit with the PDM. Honestly, this is the first time that I'm actually hearing that term in specific, but are there any other innovative project management strategies or things that you guys at Stanley have done? And I know that you've only had a couple of months there, but have you seen anything that's innovative that's impacted project success so far?
I think it ties back to what I was just talking about with the PM, but specifically the tools that are available as a part of that. I talked about the model itself and the process. Along the way, there's been developed a myriad of tools for each step of the way that you can utilize. And maybe that's innovative, maybe it's not, but to this level, I think
so. Yeah.
It adds a value to it that allows you to be more efficient as a PM, but also allows you to make decisions. And that's such a key part, right? You need the information. You need all the information if you're going to make the right decisions on a project on how to proceed. So, these tools, it's a mix too. We utilize this software called Power BI for some of it, and that's being built up now. So, want to talk about some future innovation. That's the next thing that's coming down the pipe for us is utilizing Power BI and all of its glory and its power to get this information. And then some of it's now done with some real dynamic spreadsheets as well as some online kind of applications. So it's a mix of all that. It's going towards the Power BI. And I'd say that's the big part is, we're open. Like you said, I think we have the luxury for the type of company we are to pursue these types of things and build this out. And that, I don't think anybody else is doing it quite to this degree, at least from what I've seen. So it's pretty exciting.
That's good. That's nice. I've had a brief amount of experience with Power BI, and I've seen that it's just such a powerful platform for creating dashboards and transforming the data that you have with all of your projects into like a quick, robust visual tool that you can use so you can see where you are. Because I mean, who wants to spend so much time, crunching numbers every single day just to come to a meeting and then present some numbers for about 30 minutes or so?
Talk about if you're,
like
I am. It's so good because it takes all that and it makes it a very good visual representation, which is
right. And then it's like once it's set up, you just continue to update it, and then it just continues to revolutionize and grow over time. So you can like really see where your projects have grown from start to finish, and then all of them in totality too. So I think that's a great tool, and I would actually really recommend that other engineering firms look into using something like Power BI just for the dashboard feel. Like it's great for your executive leadership meetings and stuff, and just getting the point so that you can have that high level conversation in a quick manner and get to the point.
You're absolutely right. It gets that information into it dumbs it down so that you have it all right there in an easy way to understand it and present it. It's so powerful. At least that's been my experience so far.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that others will say the same that have worked with it. But, of course, still a lot more work that I need to do with Power BI to fully even understand that full power that it actually has. Now, when I looked at it, I was like, well, this is not Excel.
No,
so it was a little bit different. Yeah. So moving on here, let's talk about engineers, right? And let's talk about engineers that are looking to make a career transition into project management. What foundational skills do you believe are crucial to making that shift into project management successful?
Sure. I'd say there's two that are absolutely key. First one's communication. If you want to be a project manager, you want to lead the project team, your communication has to be on point. And it's not just that it's clear and concise when you do communicate, it's also the frequency, right? Too often you see a project manager, and maybe it's a project that's smaller or not as high priority. They communicate well, but not very often. And that leads the team out, they start to feel lost, right? So having that communication where it's clear and concise, but it's also frequent enough to keep everybody up to date and finding that balance between maybe harassing everybody and just communicating, right? So that's number one. Just work on, if you're thinking, hey, I'm a design engineer, I want to make that leap into project management, make sure your communication skills are up to stuff, because that's going to be such a key part of your success making that transition. Number two is just having a desire to learn. And I think a lot of engineers have that. So that really comes through pretty easily, but it's outside of just the technical stuff. It's, being willing to learn every aspect, right? And things that you're not familiar with, because if you get into these large projects, it's not just engineering, right? You're going to be dealing with with all different people from different walks of life who do different types of things. Whether it's like the permitting and land agent stuff we were talking about before, construction folks, maybe you were working with them or not prior as an engineer, in the various service lines that fall within those realms, right? And you need to learn enough of everything to have the conversation with those folks, so that when a problem comes up, you know what they're talking about, but you can't possibly be the expert in everything, right? And that's another part. Maybe on the flip side, the engineers tend to sometimes have a problem with making that leap to project management, is they feel like they need to learn every aspect of a project to the point where they feel like they're an expert at it. And that's not a good use of anybody's time. That's you got to rely and trust your experts who do whatever that is. But you need to learn enough of it so that you can have that conversation, especially when a problem comes up. So then you can take the information they're giving you and disseminate that to the team, but also utilize that to make a decision on how to proceed, right? So you need that desire to learn, but you have to learn to cap it, right? You can't get to where, I have to learn everything about this, because you're never going to be that expert in everything. So it's a balance.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And I think that to your point, engineers, you went to school for engineering, right? Like you have some type of desire to learn, because why else would you put yourself through such a challenging time in your life to learn something?
Right. Yeah.
That obviously is very pivotal, Yeah. And, to add on to that, we all have the desire to learn, of course. And that's with every engineer. But one of the things that we like to talk about a lot here on this channel and a bunch of other channels that we have is the communication skills. And we all know that it's no secret that communication skills are definitely lacking in the engineering field, because communication is kind of a left brain activity.
Yeah.
Well, left brain and right brain, I'm not really sure which one it is, maybe left brain. But, like the engineering, the calculations, the surveying, all of that stuff is pretty much like right brain dominant, where you are looking at things from a very technical perspective. But a project manager is called to be somebody that can be the perfect blend in between the two, somebody that understands technical knowledge, but also has the room to be able to speak in other atmospheres, other rooms with other people of different backgrounds, that you can convey what's going on with your project. You can meet with people, talking to people of different backgrounds. It's just very important. And that's just a really, really big challenge for a lot of engineers out here. So, one thing that I would recommend is YouTube University. I've learned a lot of stuff from there, specifically on communication skills, and, stuff like watching TED Talks, getting involved in things like Toastmasters, and also just surrounding yourself around other project managers that are where you want to be really will help you to be able to round that curve as far as it goes with communication. Because as a project manager, you're usually doing a smaller amount of technical expertise, a smaller amount of technical input, and more so just delegating and managing different tasks, or towards different people that are on your team. And how can you do that without the ability to properly communicate? Just gets very
you've hit the
challenging.
nail on the head there. That's 100% correct. Like, you have to be able to communicate, especially something that, like you said, you need to maybe it's something very technical you have to dumb down for the rest of the audience, right? But you have to be able to do that in a way that allows them to understand it. And that can be tough.
Right. And another point that I wanted to bring up was I had an interview with a person some time ago on this channel, and he had talked about understanding your teammates on a more cognitive level and understanding like how their brain actually works. And I think that definitely ties in a huge amount to communication, because not everybody's the same. You have different people from different backgrounds that you're talking to, that are going to be your clients, that are going to be the people that you service, like whether it's residents for a city or whatever that may be, like your stakeholders. But then the other set of your stakeholders are your teammates as well. And how can you properly work with your teammates if you don't even understand them? You don't have that familial atmosphere where they can actually come to you, they can trust you, they can talk to you about, maybe some of your problems or so, but they have the confidence to be able to rely on you when it comes to something that may be difficult for them to talk about, or maybe they're not able to understand a certain aspect of the project. And I think it's really important that we need to dive into that a lot more as project managers that are running projects out here, because that's what really brings about success, like having a cohesive team that works together like a well-oiled machine. So
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You need them to feel like you're going to hear them and understand them when they come to you. So it's
absolutely,
it can be a challenge. So those are the big skills, I think, that, if you want to make that transition, those are the keys, right? And don't be shy about letting folks know that that's where you want to go too. If you're in the back of your mind saying, well, I think I want to eventually jump over to project management, but you don't let anybody know that, then it's going to be hard to make that transition. So that's the other thing, is let your managers know, hey, that's my career aspiration. That's where I want to go. So folks can work with you to get these skills that we're talking about up to date so that you can make that transition.
Absolutely. And again, I just believe that it's a two-way street. It's up to the person that is in management to make sure that their subordinates, for lack of better words, or their teammates feel comfortable where they can actually rely on them. And it's also up to the teammates to make sure that they have the guts to be able to talk to their project manager. So there just has to be a cohesion there. Yeah. So let's move on here and let's cover the last piece and final advice that you can offer to any engineers that are out there that are considering or beginning their journey into project management. What advice do you have for them on how they can become a successful project manager?
Yeah, and it almost feels like the cliche, but if you're an engineer working on a project and you have a PM on there that you think does a good job, well, reach out to them and see if you can shadow them a bit, right? That is the number one best thing you can do. If there's a great project manager out there that you like and you're thinking, I want to do that too, most people are pretty generous with that. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort on their part to invite you to the meeting to sit through and listen, be a fly on the wall, right? And what that's going to do is just give you an idea of how a cadence should go with a project meeting, but also just how to communicate and how successful communicators do it. And, you get to observe that a little bit first and then start diving in. That's my biggest thing. I think if you can find somebody to just let you be, can I just observe you for a bit on a few project meetings and how you do things, and maybe see some of your, how you filled out these tools and that kind of stuff. That goes a long ways towards getting people ready, I think. So that's my biggest advice is just ask, hey, can I shadow you a little bit? And most folks are going to be very open to that idea.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I 100% agree that that's probably like the best advice that you can probably have right there. Just shadowing somebody else that's already where you want to be. I mean, how else are you going to learn except for learning from the person that's actually doing exactly what it is that you want to do?
And you generally have access to them through the projects you're working on with them, right? So
exactly. And I mean, it also just shows dedication. I mean, if you're looking for a raise, if you're looking for a change in position, more importantly than the raise, that's how you do it, by putting yourself out there and taking that step forward and letting people know, hey, I'm here. I want to learn. I'm willing to put myself through through this learning process with you. I want to shadow you. I mean, how else can you position yourself better? I mean, I don't know.
No, I agree. That's the best thing you can do for anything. Maybe you get to this level, you decide I want to do something else. Well, that's the next step again. Honestly, that as far as I can tell, that's always the best thing you can do.
Nice. Well, we're going to take a quick break here. And when we get back, we're going to talk to Sean about what he thinks are the biggest PM pitfalls that he's experienced in the industry. Stay tuned. All right, so it's now time for our PM Pitfall segment of the week with Sean Brune. So, Sean, we just want to ask you the question of what you think, in your opinion, is the biggest PM pitfall that you've identified. Possibly bigger than the one that you've mentioned before, but if there's another pitfall that you have, feel free to share that with us, and how you recommend that PMs out there can overcome these things?
Yeah, I think for me, the number one, and this is totally a different topic, is it's easy to not sweat the small stuff. I guess the better way of saying that is project managers tend to get loaded up with lots of projects unless you're on very specific things, super large projects, then you tend to only have one, maybe two, right? But most PMs out there have a portfolio of work that they're working on, and it consists of projects that range from, super large to super small. And it's such an easy thing to fall into where you kind of neglect those super small ones, right? And concentrate on your big ones, because at the end of the day, they're going to move the needle a little bit more for you. And I just would encourage you to, I know it's not easy, but give those small ones that same level of attention as the big ones, insofar as you're paying attention to it. Obviously, when it's a smaller project, you probably don't need as many tools filled out, as many steps along the process done. A lot of places have a tiered process, right? Large projects are, follow all these steps, small ones follow less. Well, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that you just let it go and let people do their thing. Everybody's busy, right? If you're letting that go and not really checking in on it, do you think your team's really looking at it and giving it the same level of care as their other projects they're working on? Probably not, right? And so just making sure that just because it's small, it's maybe out of the way in your portfolio, it's not as important, whatever. You're still checking in with your team. You're still doing all the proper things you need to do to keep that thing moving and keep it on time, on budget, all that stuff, right? It's so easy to let those ones drop. So that's my biggest pitfall. And it's easy, but it takes dedication. It takes, you have to be intentional with it, right? You have to say, okay, now I'm checking in on these ones too. And I know we're all busy, but that'll help you in the long term down the road. So that's my 2 cents.
Absolutely. Enough said there. I think that you explained that pretty perfectly. So just want to thank you for your time, and thank you for coming on to the show and, gracing us with your presence here. And if you could you tell us any resources, books that you like, or also like where people can actually follow you in your journey? And do you have a LinkedIn or anything like that you would like to plug in?
Yeah. So number one for project management, PMI, such a great resource. There's local PMI chapters that people can join. Highly recommend doing it. You networks with some of the best project managers out there in a variety of industries. And that really does help you in your outlook and your way of doing projects. And yeah, if people are interested, I have a LinkedIn. I, don't have a link here, but I can send it to you to provide to folks. But yeah.
Yeah, we'll have it at the bottom of the video.
The best way to follow me is to hop on my LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, Sean, and thank you for coming on once again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt.
Nice. Please remember that you can find the show notes for this episode at www.engineeringpmpodcast.com. And there, you're going to find a summary of all of the key points that we discussed in today's episode, as well as any links to any of the resources, the websites, or the books that we mentioned in this episode as well. Until next time, I wish you all the very, very best in your project management endeavors. Take care.